Welcome to Faces of the Forgotten, and today we are at Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Evanston, Illinois. We're in. This is the mausoleum of Charles Comiskey, of which Chicago White Sox park was named since its origination. He was the owner of the White Sox, and he had a lot of baseball innovations. His nickname was Commie, and he actually was an American Major League Baseball player, manager, and team owner. And he was one of the key people who formed at the time the American League. And interesting, there's something, if I'm interpreting it right, first base, the position of first base, he kind of innovated. So baseball must have been a real loose game at the beginning. And there's a baseball somebody left. So there's a look inside. All of these graves here are all close together, and they are all reverends. Reverend Andrew Bauman died September 14th, 1923, and a lot of these are early 1900s. There's a lot of Irish here, Irish Catholic, and some very interesting mausoleums, to say the least, architecturally. They're all distinctive, and some are massive. Boy, this has to be the largest mausoleum I've ever seen, and it might even be called a high-rise. Interesting architecture, Art Deco. This is the John F. Cuneo family. I believe they were publishers in Chicago. This must house a lot of people. It's probably his whole family. Very interesting. Very interesting faces and symbolism here. I'm not sure if these are saints. Or what? Yeah. This is Saint Francis, Saint Amelia with the fish in the sea. There's a big sarcophagus right in the middle. Now this is just amazing. Just the craftsmanship of this mausoleum is probably one of the best that I've seen. It's beautiful. A little bit of Gothic. Huge granite doors. Now let me tell you, this is Faces of the Forgotten. No one has been here for a long time. I can tell you that. These doors, oh my gosh, they're solid granite. Look at the the corners of these doors. Big brass. This is just incredible. Solid doors. I can see they're at least 3 to 4 inches thick. Can you imagine? So these are pivoted hinges, I'm sure. And these are the brackets, each with four bolts, solid copper, brass. Boy, the craftsmanship, amazing. Limestone and granite. You can see the limestone again in Chicago and weather like this, an environment with these winters, how it kind of slowly melts away over the decades. It looks like they may have come back and put granite where possibly there were some windows or stained glass. I'll bet that's for security. That matches the door. I'll tell you, they wouldn't design this with like that and just stick granite in there. Of course, these are the vents. This is a vent to the crypts, which is very important. I don't know if you know, but when the bodies are first interred, you've got to vent the caskets and the vaults and the crypts as the bodies decompose and the gases. Everything has to have a place to go. The name here is Sexton. Sexton. And it says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done." Of course, that's part of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father. Here is another interesting and very well done mausoleum, architecturally. Cuneo. I don't know if that's the same Cuneos. Has the same design of the doors with the bolts and the granite. This looks like that part of it, I'm guessing that was done after, because you wouldn't need the granite doors with this outer. It's a double entry. Both of them are designed that way. Wow, this is probably the bust of the wife. So the husband must be here, right? Just amazing. Look at the detailing up there. That is something else. That is something else. All solid stone. I didn't remember seeing, there's no real, what the dates are. You can't see the crypts, so it's got to be late 1800s, early 1900s. This cemetery was 1850s, I believe. It was founded. It's a beautiful setting here. A bench called Quigley. Now this is something I've never seen before. This looks like a half or two-thirds buried mausoleum from 1893. Peter Smith. What do you suppose the deal with this is? Or maybe this is just the save some money, the way to do it. Boy, that's really odd. No windows, everything's closed up. There was a marker there. That's a new one. I mean, so this is not one where you would go in, or family members. This is, well, interesting. Kelly, Dennis Kelly, died, 55 years old. His wife, presumably Joanna, lived to be 85. There's another massive, massive mausoleum, 1899 it says. Those same granite doors. Ambrosi Plamondon. So this is actually full name Charles Ambrose Plamondon. And Charles was actually notable in Chicago. He was the president of his own manufacturing company that bore his name, which they made machinery. And sadly, he was one of the passengers with his wife on the famous ship Lusitania that was struck by a German torpedo, or maybe two torpedoes, I can't remember. But this is one of the things that started escalating, one of the big incidents that started escalating World War II, sunk by a German submarine. And it was pretty sad. They were on their way to London. Charles had business there. His wife didn't want him to go alone. She booked the trip with him. They were booked into the what's called a saloon, passenger saloon, the level they were at, and they were actually, there's newsreel of them getting out of a taxi cab there at the pier the last time they were ever seen. And sadly, they were celebrating their 36th wedding anniversary, and Charles kept a diary. And it's really sad, some of the things that were said, especially at the last entry that he cited the Irish coast. Of course, this was just before the tragedy happened. And of course, they were both lost in the sinking, and their bodies washed up on the Irish coast, and they were blackened with coal, which meant they were probably sucked into one of the funnels. So those are those giant smokestacks. As the ship went over, somehow they got probably sucked in. Not that they would have survived the cold and icy waters and everything else, the suction of the ship, but both bodies were recovered and sent back to New York in May. And there were a couple of other tragedies that struck this family. Their daughter and niece almost died in the Iroquois Theater fire of Chicago in 1903. That is a very famous incident that happened. 600 people were killed. And you'll see there's some other tie-ins here at the cemetery, other people that I found one other tomb of survivors. So they were lucky to get out of that. But his cousin, Edwin, who was the department manager of Western Electric Company, he was on board the SS Eastland, which is in my last video, when that ship, 1915, capsized in the Chicago River. And he had his wife and two daughters, and Susan, his wife, didn't make it. She died in that. So a lot of tragedy with the family, and it just shows you in those days, and also back in the 1800s, life was short and sweet for many. So, you know, these cemeteries, a lot of them had vandals and thieves, grave robbers, right? Early part of the 1900s. So I'm sure a lot of the mausoleums were broken into. Libonati, Fiora and Ernest. Actually known as Ernesto Libonati, he was a famous mandolin player in Chicago, and in 1910 he was at the top of the game with his band. And again, he's another one that survived the Iroquois fire from the orchestra pit. OBrien. Mary OBrien, born in 1851, died in 1915 with John. He was born a little earlier, 1847, died in 1907. May he rest in peace. May she rest in peace. A lot of OBriens. (1848) 1935, Thomas Ayrton. I find it interesting that this cemetery has no, I have not seen one picture like in the Bohemian Cemetery, and I've seen in other cemeteries many pictures. I haven't seen one here. And it's interesting because you could tell that from the monuments and the condition of the cemetery that there's a lot more money here. And not one picture. Some amazing mausoleums. Look at these here. Boy, this is very Art Deco. Look at that. This is Joseph B. Galli. Galli. Some beautiful stained glass work in there. Too bad I can't get a read of it. Oh, there we go. Some beautiful stained glass. Look at that. Thomas Gahan. Interesting. 1854, 1925, 1847. Thomas died in 1905. Well, here's our first face. Not a picture, but a portrait of carving. James, beloved husband of Margaret Fitzsimmons, born 1823, died 1887. That goes way back. That's James. And here is a interesting poem. Care to read that? You can just hit pause. This is metal. Interesting. All metal. You don't see that often. Paul Richard Morgan. July 3rd, 1896, January 20th, 1918. This is the grave of Jane Byrne, Jane Byrne was the mayor of Chicago. And interesting, you see there's all the other graves are pretty grown over. Well, not bad, but this one is definitely taken care of. Jane Byrne. Take from our past to give to our future. I know this is Faces of the Forgotten. This is a face of the unforgotten, famous face. But she was quite remarkable. She actually was fired. She was head of consumer affairs under Mayor Blandick here in Chicago, and she ran against him after she got fired. And of course, what helped also was that the Chicago blizzard of that year kind of paralyzed the government. So with that and her fiery personality, she beat him out. First woman mayor of Chicago, pretty cool. Maybe the only one. I don't know if we've had another woman mayor. Anyway, Jane Byrne, rest in peace. Fireman, no doubt. Fitzgerald. Patrick J. Brogan, born in, can't read it. Can't even read when he died. Looks like now, cannot tell. 1898, I think. It's that limestone again. You know there's no family left. Completely lost to time. Boy, this is quite a marker. Murray. Beautiful angel. Richard Sanders, born 1884, died 1892. Annie M. Sanders, 1857 to 1918. There's a lot of symbolism here. (1862) 1929. His wife 1864. 1939, Catherine Conway Deaver. This is very interesting. In memory of John Coleope, died October 22nd, 1894. He was 68. A resident of Chicago since 1849. May his soul rest in peace. He had an affinity with ships. Maybe he sailed on this type of ship. Looks like a schooner. Lots of coyotes in the graveyards here. There he goes. This is an interesting grave. A boy, statue of a boy. And the last name is Lyon, Lyon. The mother, 1857 to 1912, Catherine. And we have George. Father, 1847 to 1922. He lived a little longer, and this says Josie. This is Joseph Josie Lyon. He lived from 1882 to 1891. And his father, George, was the co-founder of Lyon and Healy, a manufacturer of musical harps, and they're still in business today. DePaul University has taken over its former home in the Loop. So this must be a statue of Josie, and encased in a stone column, a hollowed out column with a beautiful brass encased glass door. Yeah, with a lot of beautiful details here. Copper, brass. I wonder if that is his likeness. Probably someone took great care, paid a lot of money for that. This is the shoes. Interesting. This is the tomb of J Brogan. And again, you can see what limestone does in this type of climate. Although this is still legible. Died 12th, 1871. I can't tell the month. In memory of John Bracken. Bracken. This is the tomb of the Coughlin family, or Coughlin, 1823 to 1909. Looks like a brother and sister, Artie and Willy. Sadly, the limestone has washed away some of the features. Artie and Willy were brothers, and they died at the ages of 4 and 2. And originally this marker looked over a small lagoon, I guess, and in recent years that lagoon has been filled in. Well, that concludes our visit to the Calvary Catholic Cemetery in Evanston, Illinois. Beautiful location right on the coast of Lake Michigan here on Sheridan. You go from one atmosphere to another. Have a great day, everybody.